Hello dear students, today we will be discussing an interesting topic, that is Kothari Commission. Indian Education Commission 1964-1966, popularly known as Kothari Commission, was set up by the Government of India to examine all aspects of the educational sector in India. It was formed on 14th July 1964 under the chairmanship of Dulat Singh Kothari. The terms of reference of the commission was to formulate the general principles and guidelines for the development of education from primary level to the higher level. However, the medical and legal studies were excluded from the purview of the commission. The lease of the commission was from 1964 to 1966, and the report was submitted by the commission on 29 June 1966. The commission under the chairmanship of Dulat Singh Kothari was the 6th commission in India. It was composed of a member secretary, an associate secretary and 15 members. Apart from the core group, the commission had a panel of overseas consultants. The commission started his report with the statement that, quote, "The destiny of India is now being shaped in her classroom." It is true, the future of any nation depends upon its students, because students are the pillars of the nation. No child is born with skill that enables him to function in his particular role. The school plays an important role in all-round development of the child. Education is a fundamental means to bring any desired change in society. This can be attained only if schools become real centers of learning. Education not only helps in the development of personality of the child, but also determines his future. Recent psychological research has shown that favorable attitude towards life helps development in the earliest stages of child's growth. The prosperity and progress of a country depends upon the quality of its citizens. The quality of education provided to its citizens is the index of the measure of the quality of its citizens. Thus, education is the right key to economic development of the nation. Education is the most important component which produces greater returns on human resources. Therefore, education plays a vital role in the development of human potentialities. Every country develops its system of education to meet the challenges of changing times. In our country, the developing educational system must build upon the gains of the past and the present for better future of the people and indeed of humankind. It is possible to reach all the people and make them reap the benefits of economic and technological developments through a well-planned and well-implemented system of education. At this point in the history of India, it is socio-politically imperative to take urgent steps in this direction to help them realize their growing aspirations. Education and national objectives. In a world based on science and technology, it is education that determines the level of prosperity, welfare and security of the people. On the quality and number of persons coming out of our schools and colleges will depend our success in the great enterprise of national reconstruction, the principal objective of which is to raise the standard of living of our people. In this context, it has become urgent to re-evaluate the role of education in the total program of national development. To identify the changes needed in the existing system of education, if it is to play its proper role, and to prepare a program of educational development based on them, and to implement this program with determination and vigor. The task is neither unique nor quite new, but its magnitude, gravity and urgency have increased immensely, and it has acquired a new meaning and importance since the attainment of independence and adoption of the policy and techniques of planned development of the national economy. If the pace of national development is to be accelerated, there is need for well-defined, bold and imaginative educational policy. The population of India is now about 500 million, and half of it is below the age of 18 years. India today is essentially a land of youth. Over the next 20 years, the population is likely to increase by 230 million. The total number of educational institutions in the country is over 5 lakh. The number of teachers exceeds 2 million. The total student population, which is now about 70 million, will be more than doubled in the next 20 years, and by 1985 it will become about 170 million, or about equal to the total population of Europe. The size and complexity of these problems argue the need for rapid action in evolving an appropriate educational policy. This report is concerned with a synoptic appraisal of the existing educational situation in the country and presentation of an overall program of educational development. But education cannot be considered in isolation or planned in a vacuum. It has to be used as a powerful instrument of social, economic and political change, and will therefore have to be related to the long-term national aspirations. Problems of national development. Number 1. Self-sufficiency in food. The first and the most important problem is food. Mahatma Gandhi said, quote, "If God were to appear in India, he will have to take the form of a loaf of bread." Even at its present level of population, the country is in short supply for food. Every 5 years, the addition to the population is greater than the entire population of the UK. Self-sufficiency in food thus becomes not merely a desirable goal, but a condition for survival in India. Economic growth and full employment. India is one of the poorest countries of the world. Both the rate of growth as well as the level of national income are unsatisfactory. What is worse, even this income is very unevenly distributed. It has been suggested that our immediate objective should be to ensure a maximum consumption of Rs 35 per month to every citizen, sufficient to cover the balanced diet recommended by the Nutrition Advisory Committee, and leave a modest allowance for other essential items. This by itself is no high standard, but at present only the top 20% of the population can afford it. The lowest 30% have a monthly income of less than Rs 15, and the lowest 10% of less than Rs 10. If this minimum standard of Rs 35 per month is to be reached by 1986, great effort will have to be made on 3 fronts. The first is to secure a rapid rate of economic growth at not less than 6% per year, and if possible at about 7% per year. The second is to distribute income more equitably so that the more deprived sections of the population could have a comparatively larger share in the total national income. The third is to control the growth of population so that the birth rate is reduced at least by 1/3 and preferably by half. The least to be attempted would be to double the national income per capita at constant prices in the next 20 years. Similarly, steps will have to be taken to provide full employment to the people, especially to the educated. Social and national integration. Even more important is the role of education in achieving social and national integration. Indian society is hierarchical, stratified and deficient in vertical mobility. The social distance between the different classes, particularly between the rich and the poor, the educated and the uneducated, is large and is tending to widen. Our people acknowledge a number of different religions, and the picture becomes even more complicated because of caste, an undemocratic institution which is still powerful and which, strangely enough, seems to have extended its sphere of influence under the very democratic process of the constitution itself. The situation is complex as education is not rooted in the traditions of the people. The educated persons tend to be alienated from their own culture. The growth of local, regional, linguistic and state loyalties tend to make the people forget India. The old values which held society together are disappearing, and as there is no effective program to replace them by a new sense of social responsibility, innumerable signs of social disorganization are evident everywhere and are continually on the increase. These include strikes, increasing lawlessness and disregard for public property, corruption in public life, and communal tensions and troubles. Against this background, the task to be attempted, the creation of an integrated and egalitarian society, is needed, extremely difficult and challenging. Political development. The political challenge has many aspects, but three stand out. The first is the need to strengthen democracy. In spite of all odds, Indian democracy has given a fairly good account of itself so far. But it will not be permanently viable unless its foundations are deepened by the creation of an educated electorate, a dedicated and competent leadership, and moreover the cultivation of essential values like self-control, tolerance, mutual goodwill, and consideration for others, all of which make democracy not only a form of government but a way of life. The second is related to the defense of the country's freedom. The overriding priority of this challenge is recognized, for one must live before one can grow. But it cannot be met only by maintaining a large and efficient army or training all able-bodied youth for military service. The defense of freedom is a national concern to which every citizen contributes his best in order to achieve self-sufficiency in food and other essentials, to strengthen the country's economy, to create a secular, united and strong democratic state. The third is the growing awakening among the masses who, suppressed for centuries, have now awakened to a sense of their rights and are demanding education, equality, higher standards of living and better civic amenities. This explosion of expectations has also to be met through a planned program of national development. Internationally, the country is facing another equally significant and urgent challenge. The gap between standards of living in India and those of industrialized nations is very large. The first scientific industrial revolution, which developed in the West over the last 200 years, almost passed by us. The agro-industrial revolution, which is even more crucial for us, has yet to begin in our country. The world is now at the beginning of the second scientific industrial revolution of automation and cybernetics, which is likely to be in full swing before the close of the century. It is difficult to visualize the changes it will make in man's life. One thing, however, is certain: unless proper steps are taken right from now, the gap between us and the industrialized countries following this second revolution may become too wide to be bridged. True knowledge is another biggest challenge for India, and it cannot forever remain at the receiving end of the pipeline. The country of India must make her own contribution as an intellectual and cultural equal to the eternal human endeavor to extend the frontiers of knowledge. This demands a large-scale program for the discovery and development of talent and the creation of centers of excellence in higher education, which can compare favorably with the best of their kind in the world. The difficulty of these problems is alike only by the complexity of the situation, the gravity and urgency of the challenge, and the magnitude of the stake involved. The Indian situation with its federal constitution, wherein several constituent states are larger than many European nations, its multi-party system of democratic government, its multi-religious and mixed society consisting of highly sophisticated groups who live side by side with primitive ones, its mixed economy, which includes modern factories as well as traditional agriculture, and its multiplicity of languages, present such a complex picture that it almost resembles a miniature world. In India's attempt at national development, the welfare of 1/7 of the world's population is at stake, and the future of democracy and free societies in the balance. India needed a clear focus, deeper understanding, collective discipline, hard and sustained work, and dedicated leadership. The solution of these problems also needs the cooperation and assistance of the richer industrialized nations, which share India's faith in democratic socialism and sympathize with her struggle to create a new social order. Main recommendations. One of the main recommendations of the Commission was the standardization of educational system on 10+2+3 pattern across the country. It advised that the pre-primary education, which had different names such as kindergarten, Montessori, pre-basic, should be renamed as pre-primary, and primary education renamed as lower primary, to be up to the 4th standard. The Commission recommended that a common public educational system should be introduced, and it should be vocationalized in general and special streams by introducing work experience as a part of education. It is further stressed on the need to make work experience and social/national service as an integral part of education. Specialization of subjects was advised to be started from higher secondary levels. The days of instruction were recommended to be increased to 234 for schools and 216 for colleges, and the working hours to be fixed at not less than 1000 hours per academic year. It also advised for reduction of national holidays, linking of colleges to a number of schools in the neighborhood, utilization of school facilities 8 hours a day all through the year, establishment of book banks, identification of talents, and provision of scholarships, setting up of day study and residential facilities and opportunities for students to earn while studying were some of the other recommendations of the Commission. Commission laid stress on women education and advised setting up of state and central level committees for overseeing women education. It suggested establishing schools and hostels for women and urged to identify ways to find job opportunities for women in the educational sector. Focusing on equalization of opportunities to all irrespective of caste, religion and gender, and to achieve social and national integration. The schools were advised to provide education to backward classes on a priority basis, and the minimum level of enrollment at a secondary school were advised to be not less than 360 every year. 2 sets of curricula were prescribed, one at state level and one at national level, and the schools were recommended to experiment with the curriculum. It also proposed that 3 or 4 textbooks to be prescribed for each subject, and moral and religious education be made a part of curriculum. The curriculum prescribed by the Commission was lower primary level, 1st to 4th, 1 language regional, mathematical studies, environmental studies, creative studies, health studies, and work experience. Higher primary level 5th to 8th, 2 languages, 1 regional and 1 national, and 1 preferably a 3rd language. Mathematical studies, science studies, social studies, art, physical education, work experience, and moral studies. Lower secondary level 9th and 10th, 3 languages, mathematical studies, science studies, social studies, art, physical education, work experience, and moral studies. Higher secondary level 11th and 12th, 2 languages, 1 modern Indian language and 1 classical or foreign language. Any 3 subjects from number 1, 1 additional language, second, history, economics, logic, geography, psychology, sociology, art, physics, chemistry, mathematics, biology, geology, home science, art, physical education, work experience, and moral studies. It also recommended the establishment of guidance and counseling centers and a new approach in the evaluation of student performance. The Commission suggested the neighborhood school system without social or religious segregation and a school complex system integrating primary and secondary levels of education. It put forward the suggestion that state and national boards of examination be set up and state level evaluation machinery be put in place. The Commission recommended the establishment of Indian Education Service along the lines of Indian Administrative Service to bring in professional management to education sector. It also proposed standardization and revision of the pay scales of the teaching, non-teaching and administrative staff and prescribed minimum pay levels based on their locations. It also advised standardization of pay scales working under different management such as government, private and local bodies. The minimum scale was suggested to be in the ratio of 1:2:3 for teachers in the primary, secondary and higher levels of educational sector. Another proposal was for the establishment of machinery for continuous on-job training of the teaching staff and for efforts to raise the status of the teachers to attract talents into the profession. It urged laws to be passed to legalize the educational standards and the educational expenditure to be raised from the level of 2.9% of the GDP to 6%, to be achieved by the financial year 1985-86. Dear students, this was all about today's lecture. Hope you have understood it well. Thank you.